I call this October 18th meeting of the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority to order. Let the record reflect that all members are present. Hey. Item 2, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance with a moment of silence led by Councilor Davis. Thank you, Councillor. Next item, I make a motion to approve the September 20th, 2017 minutes. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item, I'm going to actually move up other business, number 10, to proclamations, awards, and presentations, but we're going to start off with the proclamations first. So we have the Quarterly Employee Incentive Awards. If there's an employee here to receive an award, please come forward when your name is called. We have David Laughlin. He will be receiving $200 plus 8 hours. David is recognized for his above and beyond efforts during repairs in a 24-inch transmission line break that affected water service to businesses and residents near Montgomery and Tramway on July 24th. David was on scene after hours and on his day off to help mitigate the impact on customers to expedite repairs. Thank you, David. Next person we have is Mr. Damian Lara. He also will be receiving $200 in 8 hours. Is Mr. Lara here? Luna? I'm sorry. That's my fault. Luna. Damien is recognized for his tireless commitment as a project manager to the successful completion of art-related line rehab and relocation work in the Central Avenue corridor. This was a challenging assignment involving coordination among many different agencies and contractors and requiring extensive contact with affected customer. And he rose to the occasion. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Luna. The next person is Rocio, or Franco and Terry Aragon. They're not here. They will be receiving $75 each. They are recognized for exceeding expectations in meeting deadlines and implementing new Lab Vantage information system. Thank you, guys. Next person, Emerson Silva, $100. Emerson is recognized for his excellent work in organizing the as-built plan for the Cip Projects location in the South Side Water Reclamation Plant, compiling everything into an easily searchable map book that is already improving construction and maintenance efficiency at the facility. Thank you, Emerson. Ross Pino, Steve Medina, and Ronnie Lovato. They'll be receiving $150 each. These gentlemen are recognized for spearheading the training of more than 300 staff and implementation of our upgraded Maximo work order system, which is the foundation of our asset management and maintenance for repairs function. Thank you, gentlemen. Angelo Baca, James Baca, Nicole Lucas, Kamet, sorry for massacring the names, Kevin Lukau, Ron Montano, Daniel Mora, and Joseph Perkins. Any of you folks there? There's a couple. You guys will be receiving $75 each. These individuals also are recognized for their excellent efforts in training fellow employees in the complexities of the upgraded Maximo work order system. Thank you, gentlemen. Jeffrey Lai and George Rodriguez, $200 each. You folks here? No? They are recognized for going the extra mile in advising and coaching students in the youth mentorship program the utility started last summer, and they were and continue to be excellent role models for these young men. Kenneth Leip and Layman Waller, $200 each. They're recognized for their excellent management and lengthy bypass procedure during construction of the Southside Water Reclamation Plant because of their efforts, which required long hours and early mornings. Water quality during the procedure was never compromised. Thank you. Porfirio, Maestas, Miguel Leiva, and Leo Villalpando, $75 each. These individuals are recognized for innovating their own initiative and an improved storage and retrieval system for sump pump hoses at the Southside Water Reclamation Plant. Ruben Ortega, is he here? He's not here. Didn't come to collect $200, man. Plus 8 hours, yeah. Mr. Ortega is recognized for his excellent outreach efforts to affected businesses and their customers during art-related water line relocation and rehab along Central Avenue. He is also recognized for his excellent system knowledge and employed in keeping this very difficult project on schedule. Next, we have Robert Giovine, Marshall Sabay, Xavier Vasquez, and David Cook, $50 each. These individuals are recognized for the voluntary and above and beyond contributions in development of forklift safety training materials. Bianca Nunez, $100. Is Bianca here? She is recognized for the key role she played in the Maximo Upgrade project in identifying business processes, coordinating training, and taking the new system live. There she is, Bianca. Congratulations. Roland Rocha, $200 plus 8 hours leave, and Priscilla Stevens. They are actually recognized for many nights and weekends they spent ensuring the success of the most recent Maximo Upgrade project. Man, this Maximo is a big deal, huh? Their tireless work in designing, configuring, testing, and training was critical to the project's outcome. Thank you both. Paul Davidson, $200 plus 8 hours. Mr. Davidson is recognized for stepping into the successfully take over as technical lead on the recent Maximo Upgrade project, its role in which he excelled as a leader, a systems analyst, a programmer, a business analyst, and a customer service representative. Next, we have Mr. Mark Wallace, $200. Is he here? Mr. Wallace is recognized for his noteworthy accomplishments in programming database design to help implement conditional monitoring for preventive maintenance on various pump, blower, gearbox, and motor assets based on actual equipment run times rather than upon an arbitrary schedule. Congratulations. Thank you. Kathy Leonard, Erica Jaramillo, Julie Garcia, Ramona Plaze, Chris Johnson, Aurora Gonzalez Aller, and Laurel Hager, $100. They're all here. These individuals are recognized for their tireless efforts in outreach to employees on issues pertaining to health, safety, and wellness. On behalf of this entire board, I just want to thank you all for working and going above and beyond your duties. So thank you. I hope you guys enjoy the money. We're going to come around? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. So we'll move on. I actually asked a couple of the folks if I massacred a few names, and somebody told me a bunch of them. So anyway, sorry about that. Next item is item B, Renewable Energy Project for the year, Albuquerque Bernalillo County Utility Water Authority Treatment Plant Solar Array. Mr. David Morris and Councillor Davis.
Madam Chair, members of the board, it's my pleasure to present to you this award from the New Mexico Association of Energy Engineers. They named our new 1.5 megawatt solar array at the San Juan Chama plant as the state's renewable energy project of the year. Back in September, Councillor Davis was kind enough to accept the award on behalf of the Water Authority, and perhaps he has a few words to say.
Let me just say thank you to that. They extended their appreciation. We got to meet and sit with the local companies who did this work in partnership with the Water Authority, from Affordable Solar and Array Tech and others that did this work. And they gave a lot of awards that night to a lot of different organizations and folks who had done some great work, but this was their large project of the year. And it showed, again, was a great example to some other folks from other municipalities around the state of what we can do in the public sector to save our ratepayers money and to put money back into renewable and power our systems. So they were incredibly impressed that the Water Authority had that kind of vision, and that came from staff to do this work. So let us extend our congrats back to y'all as well. Thank you very much to you and Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Congratulations. So now we're on to, under other business, item A, OB 1710, the water report by Mr. John Stomp, Mr. Peterson, and in the Interstate Stream Commission.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I'm just here tonight to introduce Rolf Schmidt-Peterson. He has been with the Interstate Stream Commission for 17 years, representing the Rio Grande Compact as engineer advisor to the Rio Grande Compact and a whole host of other things. As part of our water report that we've been giving to you on a monthly basis, I spoke a little bit about the compact a few months ago. We asked Rolf to come and kind of give an overview for you. So, Rolf Schmidt-Peterson.
Thank you, John. Good evening. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about the Rio Grande Compact. We do it a number of times in kind of small technical groups, and but don't get the opportunity to talk so much about collaboration and people working together to address long-term technical issues, and this is a good chance to do that for me today. So I wanted to mention up front, I am the Rio Grande Basin Manager for the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission. I'm also New Mexico's engineer advisor to the Rio Grande Compact and the Rio Grande Compact Commission. In that role, I report directly as a principal to the state engineer of New Mexico, who is our Rio Grande Compact Commissioner. The next slide that's on here just talks about our commission, and you can read that piece, and I'll move to the next part, which talks about the compact itself. And so the Rio Grande Compact is both state law in New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas, and federal law in the form of these agreements that come in place when states amongst themselves have conflicts about how they deal with commerce or issues of water moving across their boundaries. And the Rio Grande Basin has had water use conflicts and issues that go back well over 100 years. The Rio Grande Compact itself of 1938 is an attempt and an effort in law to resolve a lot of those. And I'm here to say today that it has done that in many different places. There's controversies in some parts, but the area I'm talking about today that has to do with Albuquerque is really not one of those. So this compact was agreed to in 1938 by the state of New Mexico. Our legislature agreed to it, the governor signed it. It's the law of New Mexico. Again, that happened in Colorado and Texas. And then the compact went to Congress. Congress ratified it, was signed. It's federal law also. It is complex in many areas because if you look at this graphic, you see the different colors that go in there from all the way near Creede, Colorado, and Alamosa to different ones down by Fort Quitman, Texas. The compact covers that entire area but it divides the basin into separate pieces. And here I'm going to talk specifically about the middle Rio Grande piece. And that's what's in this next graphic. This is the area we all live in. And in fact, it covers the area from about Los Alamos, New Mexico on the river. When you cross the river at that location, there's a river gauge there. It's been there for over 100 years. It's called the Odor gauge. And that gauge is what we measure that determines how much water we need to deliver down to Texas here at Elephant Butte Reservoir, which is at the bottom of the slide. And this compact just talks specifically about those pieces. It doesn't talk about Albuquerque. It doesn't talk about Santa Fe. It doesn't talk about the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, Elephant Butte Reservoir, any of those pieces. What New Mexico agreed to in that time period was based upon how much water passes that ODE gauge. From there forward, based upon on every year, there's a certain amount of water we need to deliver downstream. And we deliver it into Elephant Butte. And in Elephant Butte Reservoir, that water gets divided further by the Bureau of Reclamation in a project and delivered to New Mexicans in Las Cruces, Elephant Butte Irrigation District, all the way down to El Paso and beyond that, and to the Republic of Mexico. So these things are all tied together, but we have the specific requirement. And here's a graphical representation of that requirement. And what this does, and I stepped over one piece there, the compact has articles, terms, like you'd see in a contract, that says, here's what you will do, Article 1 to 14 or 15. Article 4 is for the Middle Valley. It's our delivery obligation, and it's just a schedule that says, in any 1 year, measured on a calendar year basis, so much water past that ODE gauge, here's the amount of that water that needs to be delivered into and below Elephant Butte. This graphic puts together, and actually I have to give Norm Gom and I think and John Longworth credit a number of years ago for putting this together to graphically depict what that compact means for the Middle Rio Grande. So on the bottom, on the x-axis, bottom axis here is what that annual flow would be. And given that annual flow, the teal, blue, is what the Middle Rio Grande can consume. The orange is what needs to be delivered downstream. So first thing in that regard, when you look at it, there's a lot more orange that shows up than teal. And that's a reflection of how much water was being used in the Middle Rio Grande when this compact was put into place. New Mexico was saying, we have a status quo here. We're going to continue to deliver the same amount downstream. And so what it really means is when you have a really big water year in New Mexico, there is no extra water, right? That water needs to be delivered downstream into Elephant Butte Reservoir, and sometimes in very large quantities. This year on the Rio Grande, we'll have somewhere, if you look at the graphic down below, a little over 1 million acre feet of water, 1.2 million acre feet, maybe 1.3. We can consume 400,000 of that. We have to deliver 800,000 into Elephant Butte. And I'm going to tell you today that we've done that. The other piece on this is anything more than that flow, we have to deliver every drop into Elephant Butte. Don't spill any of it, get it there. If you have a lesser flow, we have to deliver less water, but we also can consume less. Now, this is just of the natural flow of the river at that gauge location. There's also your Trans Mountain water, your San Juan Chama water, which I'm sure John and others have talked to you about. That's not included in here. And in addition, what you don't see in here is water that falls in the Middle Rio Grande, makes it to the river, offsets, kind of consumption, or makes it into Elephant Butte. New Mexico can utilize all of that. It's just highly variable. It can go from almost zero to lots of water. So the next piece on that is, for the Rio Grande Compact, when we do an accounting, we're really looking at a bank, like a bank account. But we have a bank account that is different from a normal bank account here. It's based on the terms of that compact. And it's simply those terms. And this one says, hey, we're going to measure you based on an accounting that's a calendar year. So December 31 of any one time period, right at midnight, here's how much you delivered for that year. Based upon that number for the year, here's how much you were supposed to get to Elephant Butte. So in this Article 4, that's all that is about. We account that with the Bureau of Reclamation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the state of Texas, the United States Geological Survey, the state of Colorado. We do this every year. And we also coordinate during the year on where we're at. We have a system of credits and debits like you would have in a bank account. You have a credit, you have a balance. You have a debit, well, you're in the hole, you got to do something about that. But you're not in a crisis situation, you're not out of compliance until you have a debit of 200,000 acre-feet of water, which is a lot of water. And that's an important point, because I think most people, when they're thinking about a bank account or other things, they say zero is an important point, you got to remember it. In this compact, you have to think about zero as 200,000 acre-feet of debit. If we over-deliver into Elephant Butte, we get a credit. And that credit is owned by the state of New Mexico for its use. It cannot be used from Elephant Butte, but we can use it to the benefit of our citizens or future years under deliveries. We can do something called a relinquishment, and I hate that some of these terms are arcane, but they're terms of these compacts. If we have credit water and we relinquish that to Texas and Texas accepts, we can provide that wet water to the Rio Grande project and to Mexicans downstream, and then we have an ability in future drought years to use that water for New Mexicans upstream. We've been doing that for the last 15 years. And when you look at that in total, on an annual basis, this next graphic shows how we have done year to year from our Article 4. How much do we have to deliver? And I think, I'm going to focus on the stuff that is the last 15 to 20 years. That's when I've been here. And I think if you look at that graphic, you'll see that in most years, we're actually over-delivering water. We delivered more water into Elephant Butte than was required under the compact. And there's multiple reasons for it. I would tell you that, and I'll talk about a little of them, but a big part of it is collaboration. It's collaboration on multiple parties, including the Water Authority, things we didn't necessarily have 20 years ago, but we have today, and a big part of that is staff and directors and so on of these different agencies, including the Water Authority. People are all working together, recognizing this. That is either giving us an over-delivery or allowing us to be pretty close. I talked to you about this relinquishment of credit water. Another part of the compact that's important to you all for your operations of your surface water diversion is a prohibition of storage. If Elephant Butte Reservoir is low, like it has been for the last 8 to 10 years, it's a senior reservoir. It was built in 1906. It has a priority for storage of water. Almost every reservoir upstream of that we have, Cochiti, that you might know, Albuquerque, others, those reservoirs are junior to that Elephant Butte. So when Elephant Butte Reservoir is low, New Mexico is prohibited from storing water in those upstream reservoirs unless you have a credit and you've relinquished it. If you don't have it, you can't store, you can't release. Why is that important to you all? Well, it goes to the operation of your surface water diversion, right? In many parts of the year and in the summer, if the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District has water in El Vado Reservoir that they can release downstream, they do that operation. Your surface water diversion releases San Juan Chama water essentially on top of that and is able to operate. If the Conservancy District has no water, there won't be any water in the river. And essentially you'd have a dry river through the Middle Rio Grande. We have successfully avoided that in the last 15 years. And it's because we had credit water and we relinquished it. A lot of stuff on this next slide. You can look at it. Main point is we've used 75% of the relinquished credit water we had available to us over the last 15 years. We have 25% left, approximately. And that's sufficient, I think, from what I see, to make it through 2 or 3 more years, even if there are some dry years. So from a compact perspective with regards to certainty, that's pretty darn good. I mean, we're looking at every year and what do we do in that year to be able to make it. There's no other greater predictability. You just have to look at what nature provides. And then this is the last part, almost the last part. This is our summary under the compact. And if you look at this slide, the bottom part is just the year, 1940 to 2016. And the red line in here is our compliance point under the compact. The black line is where we sit annually based on our accrued compact compliance. And you can see in here, we're at about a negative 20,000 acre feet for last year. I'll tell you for the upcoming year, we'll be right at about 0, pretty close. And that's 200,000 acre feet above our compliance point under the compact. And why are we at about 0? Well, when we relinquished that credit water, 380,000 acre feet, we gave up 380,000 acre feet of credit water. It went away, the account dropped. We did that for our citizens and the environment, both downstream and upstream of Elephant Butte Reservoir, and we did it consciously because we wanted our citizens to be able to get through the drought, and we knew we can give up some of this credit water to do that, and they're all working with us. And this is just a slide that talks a little bit about that, and I cannot tell you how important it is for all of the water managers to be working together. The ISC partners with the Water Authority. Your staff, we talk with your staff sometimes on a daily basis about their operations of the surface water diversion and what's going on in the river. How are they doing with regards to offsets for permits and so on? How might they help us at the end of the year or at different times with San Juan Chama water? The Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District has been operating with us for the last 5 years really well. They have changed much of how they operate. It's made a big difference for their farmers, the environment, and the compact. Office of the State Engineer, Bureau of Reclamation, 6 Middle Rio Grande Pueblos, I could go on and on with that. We do a wide range of things together. I won't go into details. We work a lot on ESA issues. All those things right now are working well together. So, and that's it.
Sir Jones.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us this presentation. This is one we haven't had quite like this before, and it's excellent. It opens up the whole spectrum of what we do. I think I understand this, but basically what you're saying is this is the Rio Grande Compact Commission, and the members are the different states, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas.
Madam Chair, Board Member Jones, yes.
Thank you. And therefore, even though the Water Authority follows all the guidelines and we work with, but we are not, the Water Authority is, nor is the City of Albuquerque, a member of the compact. Is that correct?
That's correct. You're related through state engineer permits is how that really comes into play.
Okay, and if I'm also listening correctly, not only have we, now I'm going back to the Water Authority, not only have we been good stewards of our water, but in fact, we have also given up a large number of credits in order to help your fellow compact members deal with drought issues.
A little bit different than that. It's really the state of New Mexico that gave up that credit water. And we did that in order to help the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, the Water Authority, the Elephant Butte Irrigation District, and our other water users make it through the drought. And by doing that, we reduced New Mexico's credit.
Madam Chair, just one more quick one. So the Water Authority, which isn't a member of this, but is because we work with water in the state of New Mexico, is in your opinion doing a good job or a bad job, or are we cooperating, or how do you think the City of Albuquerque?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Jones, we work day to day with the Water Authority staff. They're very professional staff. Everybody works for their particular entity or agency, and they represent that agency well, and they're professional in how they do that. And where there is an ability to be working together, we work together. And in most of the cases now, that's exactly what's occurring. So we work really well together.
Thank you. Interesting and good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Perry.
Mr. Schmidt, Peterson, can you, this compact was developed back in 1938, as you pointed out, and I know that things have changed considerably since 1938, both in the Rio Grande Valley here in Albuquerque and the population growth and things like that, as well as weather patterns and precipitation and a host of other things. Is there flexibility in the compact to accommodate those changing conditions of water flow itself, of population growth and things that are associated with that, or is it fairly rigid?
Madam Chair, is it Board Member Perry? There, yep. Okay, Rob.
Fine,
So
that's okay.
That's a really good question. You know, the Rio Grande Compact itself, when we were looking at this article, recognizes drought and it recognizes variability. And it basically sets a schedule for New Mexico within that. And so in that way, it's actually quite flexible compared to other interstate compacts. But, you know, if there's something else that happens in the system that we change with regards to water consumption and so on, you still have to meet your compact obligations. And those are simply set. And I would just bring that up in the context of the Water Authority, because you have permits, licenses with the State Engineer's Office that essentially requires your footprint on the river today and in the future to be the same as it was in 1956. And that's partly due to the Rio Grande Compact. So in that case, you know, that's a pretty firm thing, and it's not very flexible. But you and your water planning and the staff with this 100-year plan, and I would say really that as one of the parties that have really changed their operations in the last 15 years, Santa Fe has done that, the Water Authority, Albuquerque, the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, everybody's responding to drought and these changes, and they've been shown they've been able to work together to get to really good outcomes.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Stitt.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. This has been really helpful. I think you've explained it in a way that's comprehensible to all of us, and I appreciate that. Thank you. The one thing I'm not sure I understand is the idea of credit water. You have a slide here that, can you just explain what that is,
To go
please?
back here. So, yes, Madam Chair, Board Member, the credit is, I'll go back here a little bit more. Go to this graphic. So if you look at this graphic of annual Rio Grande delivery departures, this is a representation in any one year if we under-delivered, which is the negative numbers, or if we over-delivered. So in that regard, in any one year, we're measuring if we did better or not, right? So then when we come to this other slide, it's just looking at the accumulation over years of those over-deliveries and under-deliveries, and says, hey, if you have an accumulation of over-deliveries, you have a credit under the compact. And that credit is not just a paper number here, it's actually water. It's water that's sitting in Elephant Butte Reservoir. And that is New Mexico's credit water. And that is water that is not available for release. Does that help?
The piece I don't understand is why it's not available for release.
That is a specific term of the compact. It basically says when New Mexico has over-delivered, that credit water is New Mexico's. And I think I'm trying to think about the exact wording, but the Rio Grande project and the Bureau of Reclamation and/or Texas, when it comes to that, they are prohibited under the compact from using that credit water and releasing it. Simply a term of the compact in the way that it's written.
So do we assume when it's released from Elephant Butte that it is then delivered to Texas?
Are you talking credit water or just the regular
Both.
water? When water is delivered into, well, the delivery is more complex than that. It's both the change in storage in the reservoir and the release from it. And it's the accumulation of those that determines if we've delivered appropriately under the compact. So, and then yes, the compact actually doesn't say you're delivering at Elephant Butte to Texas. It just says you're delivered to Elephant Butte.
Got it. From the bottom of Elephant Butte, there's a requirement to release a certain amount.
There's not a requirement to release a certain amount. The releases from the reservoir are based upon demands downstream and availability of water. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you, that was very
Thank you.
helpful. I think I heard something like that along the line, you know, and I kind of described it as kind of the rationing of water, right? Everybody kind of, lots of folks just have this general idea that water is just coming down the Rio Grande, but it's very mindful on how it's used and stored and
Yes.
delivered and shared and,
Many people looking at it every day.
yeah, thank you, appreciate that. Next item we have is the odor control strategy, Charlie Leader. That's OB 1711.
Here we are. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give you an update on what we're doing on odor control strategies, both in the collection system and at the wastewater treatment plant. I think for many of you, this is just take care of it and deal with it. It's certainly not as much fun to talk about this as it is the previous presentation, but nonetheless, let's talk briefly what we are doing to be a better neighbor, a good neighbor. We'll touch on odor control and the collection system working together in conjunction with odor control efforts at the Southside Water Reclamation Plant. We'll also touch on what are our current operational strategies for odor control at the plant and discuss some capital improvement projects that are underway and those that are planned for the future to control odors at these facilities. There is a linkage between what goes on in the collection system and at the treatment plant regarding odor control efforts. Both of them focus on measuring and controlling hydrogen sulfide. And there are a lot of compounds out there that contribute to odors. This one, however, hydrogen sulfide, has perhaps the lowest detection threshold, which is 20 parts per billion. And if we can keep things below 20 parts per billion, chances are good we've done our homework on a lot of other compounds. There's chemical treatment program, there has been for quite some time, to reduce collection system odors. We add a mix of iron salts, hydrogen peroxide, some alkali. They work in different ways, but what they do is, by minimizing odors in the collection system, it helps extend and preserve life of the collection system. Less hydrogen sulfide in the collection system means there's less material that could eventually be oxidized to sulfates, and you get acidic conditions that actually eat at the collection system piping. So working on that chemical treatment helps preserve the life of the collection system. More importantly, it also reduces fugitive emission odors at the treatment plant. What are they and why are that important? Well, based on a study that's not even a year old, December 2016, we learned that by focusing on fugitive releases from our primary clarifiers, our digester tanks, and any open channels that convey primary clarifier effluent, we'll do a good job of being a good neighbor and trying to keep things below 20 parts per billion. So with the marching orders from that study, we're now meeting weekly to evaluate hydrogen sulfide data that we collect, and we coordinate and plan chemical treatment changes. Well, who is we? In this case, it's members of the collection section for field operations working hand in hand with plant operations staff to plan out what we might do to adjust and change to optimize chemical treatments so that we're keeping hydrogen sulfide emissions from the primary clarifiers, we're keeping them at or below 5 parts per million as we measure that at the clarifier. Something else we're doing in operational efforts, we have third-party evaluations by my colleague, Mr. Ed Lamb, in the audience, who's taking care of a third-party evaluation of our biofilter performance, and he's also checking hydrogen sulfide levels at the fence lines so we have a better idea of what it is that's leaving the site. And we do this on a quarterly basis. We've been doing this for at least the last 5 years, if not longer. CIP projects, things that were now underway is we're going to renovate our big primary clarifiers, 5 through 8, You see a picture of a dome. Once these domes are in place, that's really going to put a lid on fugitive emissions from that source and will be a big help towards controlling fugitive emissions. We're also working on a project for digester gas collection lines. We've got some very old piping. It fills with water and fortunately results in the release of digester gas from our digesters. That's not good because that's gas we could burn and make energy from. And also, if it's leaving the plant site, our neighbors can smell it. So this will not be a really expensive project, we don't believe, but it'll go a long way towards trapping fugitive odors from that source. We're also working on we've actually purchased the equipment. We're going to do some supplemental odor control to collect gases from one of the process rooms, the first one where raw wastewater comes into the plant, and we're going to scrub that with activated carbon. So these are things that are now underway. Some additional CIP projects that are scheduled to start in July of 2018 will be a core screening facility that'll have an odor control element that's designed to treat odorous air in the Valley Interceptor. And we're also looking to do a similar project. We're going to repurpose some biofilters that'll treat odorous air in the Tijeras Interceptor. So this is kind of a proactive way of going at it. Don't just let the air get out in the plant. Collect it, scrub it, treat it for hydrogen sulfide and other odorants before it gets released into the space around the plant. We have other ongoing efforts to continue as a good neighbor in the Mountain View Neighborhood Association. We're going to look at improving our primary clarifier operations to try and reduce sulfide releases from the clarifiers. In specific, is there something we can do now a little bit different than what we're doing that will help control the generation of sulfides that then need to be treated in the odor control systems? We're going to look at a pilot study for iron addition to the digester sludge. If we can lock up sulfides with iron salts, there's that much sulfides that go into the digester gas that could possibly be an odor release. It also will extend the life of our cogen engines because there's not going to be sulfide emissions from them and the wear and tear associated with sulfides in the digester gas. We're also going to look at an advanced collection system model that covers system airflows. And by scientifically looking at this, we can look for odor potential hotspots, look at areas of our collection system with corrosion concerns, and possibly come up with even better approaches to chemical treatment for odors. A tall order for certain, but this is our approach for trying to continue to be a good neighbor at the wastewater plant and also facilities where our collection system, pump stations, where we could possibly impact neighborhoods. And on that note, be happy to take any questions we might have from the board.
Any questions? Councillor Jones.
Just a statement. I have to tell you, it's fascinating listening to you talk about getting a stink out of the air and the words that you use to make that come out. It's like, this is amazing. This is a big story.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you,
It holds my
Councilor
interest. This is fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just have one question if there's no other questions. In terms of calls about the odor, especially in the Mountain View area, have those been reduced or are they still pretty much the same?
Madam Chair, I believe, compared to where things were 6 years ago, I think we're operating a lot smarter and we do respond and we find things that give us grounds for improvement. For example, the fire station that's in the Mountain View Neighborhood Association, one of the county fire stations, they called up and they figured out, they thought, okay, it's that wastewater plant doing their smelly thing again and we can't stand it here. Well, what we found in response was it was actually something in the collection system. A couple things we could fix very quickly, something that required a little bit more money to fixing the collection system. But the important thing is when people call, we get to the bottom of it and we respond, because we do want continuous improvement in our performance here. It is not okay to just stand pat and do nothing or just sit on our laurels. We really want, we don't want you to get calls to say, would you all please do something about that?
Yeah.
It kind of shows that we're not doing our job.
I was just curious because, you know, being from the South Valley, knowing how bad the odors were when we were growing up, I think, you know, you guys have always, obviously there's always a need for improvement, but I think you have done a great job, especially even over there on Yucca and Central with what's going on there, and, you know, the scrubber, the biofilter, the chemicals that were being put in. So there was always an attempt to try to address it, and obviously we have the project that's just about completed there on, I think it's, what's 57th is the street, or is it 657th? Yeah, so that should be completed here pretty soon, and hopefully that'll continue to be progress in terms of addressing those types of issues. So thank you, I appreciate the presentation.
Well, also, on a note in passing, we try to be proactive in the neighborhood associations, not wait for complaint. One of the things we're doing is, you know, the community garden. It's adjacent to our division headquarters, and, you know, most recently, I think we've even come up, they don't water their garden in the winter. They're not growing anything. So I think we've recently reached an agreement. We'll pick up the cost for water service during the times of the year when the community garden isn't in growing season. So just another example of how we try to be proactive and be a good neighbor. I think we're succeeding. I'm not getting any brickbats thrown my way, so I guess we are.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So next we have public comment. Ms. Carrion, how many people do we have signed up to speak?
We have 3.
3? Oh,
Yes.
okay, so you'll have 3 minutes to speak with a 2.5-minute warning, and if you will call the first speaker, please.
Dave McCoy, followed by Norman Guam.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members. I'm Dave McCoy, Director for Citizen Action New Mexico. The Kirtland Air Force Base jet fuel spill risk assessment report assumes that there's no risk to the municipal wells. The risk assessment assumes that interim measures and land use controls will contain and prevent a plume of ethylene dibromide from reaching municipal wells. Now, that type of analysis is supposed to only come later in the corrective measures evaluation. It's inappropriate in the risk assessment to make that assumption. The risk assessment did not consider the actual human health risk of ethylene dibromide along with 20 other contaminants or the risks of accidents. According to an in-terra review that apparently the Water Utility Authority asked for, the January 2017 facility investigation report is so flawed that a conceptual model still cannot be made that would lead to remedial strategies for this fuel spill. The investigation report is full of the same sort of data gaps that caused withdrawal of the investigation report 3 years ago. So we got a lot of delay going on here. The in-terra review was never shown to the public, but was obtained by Citizen Action on a public records request, along with emails between the Air Force and the New Mexico Environment Department. The emails discuss how to minimize, quote, backlash about the July 2017 meeting cancellation and, quote, strengthen public trust. Once again, the public was cut out of the loop about the real technical concerns for the jet fuel spill. Transparency and furnishing honest technical assessments would go a long way to enhance public trust. There needs to be an independent oversight panel of experts to issue an annual report for a remediation project of this size and expense. We don't have that. There should be public monitoring of these technical group meetings with minutes kept for those meetings and made available to the public. Nobody knows what's going on in the public at those technical group meetings. I don't know if the Water Utility Authority even knows what's going on. There needs to be an intra-agency organization chart and regular meetings with the Air Force. Right now, the entire program's in chaos. You know, if you ask for, well, what is the interaction between these different pieces in different agencies, regulatory agencies in the Air Force, there's no organization chart available, you know? So it's really a messy situation. Any questions? By the way, I sent you all an email package of that Intero report and those emails, so I don't know if you got it or not. Anyhow, thank you.
Norm Guan, followed by Elaine Hubbard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Authority Board. My name is Norman Gom. I live at 44 Canyoncito Drive Northeast in Albuquerque. Please consider this as a petition for board action. I'm a retired citizen. I represent only myself and the interests of numerous friends and relatives that are your water customers and bear the financial burden of your decisions. First and last in this petition, please do not subsidize the profits of a foreign bank's land speculation on the backs of your ratepayers and their incredibly successful water conservation achievements. Santolina's next step is your water development agreement. I know from the results of an inspection of Public Records Act request documents that I got today that they are putting their agents, their numerous agents, are putting pressure on your staff to begin negotiations. That IPA request also didn't reveal any communications between the board and its members and your staff. Would you please, as a board acting in an open public meeting, provide policy direction to your staff regarding a water development agreement with Santolina? The water availability statement that your staff apparently, the water availability statement that your staff apparently intends to issue first is necessary. But I believe the existing processes, as I understand them, are woefully inadequate to fairly represent the interests of authority ratepayers in this deal. Let's look at this in perspective. Santolina seeks substantially more water from the authority than the city and county of Santa Fe use every year. The value of a new 14,000 acre-foot water supply in this setting is immense. But you can think of the value for the purposes of this discussion, it's starting at $500 million. You're entering into this $500 million deal with an international bank that hopes to turn a profit on its speculative acquisition of lands. And the public water supply acquired at great public expense over many decades is the only possible way they can do that. If Santolina were negotiating with a private party for a new water supply of this magnitude, the private party would recover its costs in full. You, the authority board, must require Santolina to deposit cash. The authority should require enough money in advance to pay for the authority's competent experts and staff to do their homework and to sit across the table from Santolina's numerous and well-paid consultants and lawyers. I will turn this over to your staff for the record, but let me close, since I have limited time, by saying that it's not just the infrastructure. The value of the water rights, the drinking water project, which was designed to provide service to Santolina, couldn't have been done before that, and the groundwater infrastructure to back up has enormous value. And I request that you realize that in your negotiations. Thank you.
Our last speaker, Elaine Hubbard.
1 second. Commissioner Stebbins had a comment or question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mark, Mr. Gom referenced some communications between the Santolina agents and the Water Authority staff. Can you be more specific about what has taken place?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hart Stubbs, I think Peter O might be better suited because he's the one that provided this, but I think there was some communication between their attorney and Mr. O in terms of a suggested development agreement, which we responded is premature. There's no basis for negotiation. We have not issued an availability statement or plan to anytime soon, but Peter can elaborate.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hart Stebbins, yes, I had a meeting with John Salazar, who represents the Western Albuquerque Landholding Company. He delivered to me a proposed draft of a development agreement, And I informed him that, as Mr. Sanchez indicated, that was premature, that first of all, they have to submit an application for a water availability statement. We have to review that application, and then I presume that there's going to be some back and forth negotiations, because I would be surprised if their application covered every aspect of the issue, at least as far as we're concerned. So until we arrive at an agreement on a water availability statement, the development agreement is premature. And we've not scheduled any meeting to discuss the steps, but I had indicated to Mr. Salazar that the first step, I think, would be sort of a high-level meeting to discuss what the process they're going to have to follow is going to be, and then we can get the discussion going about the water availability issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elaine Hubbard. Tonight, I would like to suggest an idea that actually came from today's Journal's op-ed, if anybody read the Albuquerque Journal today, about the APS idea. But first, some background. I was thinking about various items that have come to light recently, which the board might be interested in knowing about. For instance, last month, the board approved the fourth quarter performance indicator report that included a scorecard. The scorecard reported that 21 of 23 indicators were on target or target achieved. One example of my concerns: the target for CIP emergency versus planned spending was 54 to 46%. The report the indicators reported an actual 12% of emergency spending. Laudable. However, the unaudited FY17 CIP expenditure summary, which used to be provided to the board, includes planned and emergency spending. It reports that 60%, not 12%, was used for emergency spending. It would be useful, given that discrepancy, to know how the indicator was actually determined. Another example of concern: when the target for rehabilitation spending was $50 million, it was reported to be more than double, or $111 million, and that was on target. How can the actual spending be double with the target spending if the target is your budget? That sounds like overspending. Apparently, that's what happened. Spending for CIP projects did jump in FY17. And for the priority 1 projects, it went from $70 million in FY16 to $120 million in FY17. Of that, $53 million was for encumbered projects. That left a $33 million deficit in last year's summary CIP spending for priority 1. This year, the encumbrances were rolled over. So the encumbrances of $53 million were rolled over into this year's budget. Now, remember that you approved a budget for CIP spending of like $62 million. So adding those together is a whole lot more than there may be money. And according to that, that calculation, there is a $33 million deficit. How will that be made up? The maintenance and repairs are also another issue, and I could go on with some other examples, but I want to get to my idea, which is to appoint an inspector general. Just sort of like for APS, this could be a more independent advisor who could help the board look at these items from an individual perspective. I would add that it's great to have a water report every month. There should be also information provided, such as water use, every month. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that our last speaker? Okay, so we will move on to announcements and communication. So we have our next scheduled meeting, which actually should fall the day before Thanksgiving. So we have canceled that, and so we rescheduled for November 16th, 2017, 5 p.m. in the Vincent E. Griego Chambers. So item number 7, introduction of legislation, we have none. Consent agenda, item 8, we have none. So we will move on to approvals, which is 9. First, we have item A, C 1727, approving the FY 2017 fourth quarter operating financial report. Mr. Stan Allred.
I'm getting dizzy. Madam Chairman, members of the board, I'm Stan Allred. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Water Authority. Real quick, we'll go through the fourth quarter report. Again, this is unaudited. We're in the middle of our year-end audit with Wagall, Peterson, Diamond, and Walker, and that audit should be done sometime in June. The first slide we have here is just our revenues. Our revenues are about $4.5 million above the revenues from last year at the same time. That's primarily from increase in consumption during the first 5 months of fiscal year 2017 and also the last 3 months of fiscal year 2017. At the end of FY17, we have $8 million in our rate reserve as mandated by $2 million a year by the rate ordinance. And we have a working capital balance of $13.7 million, which is a change from about 4 years ago when it was a negative $18 million. So that's a switch from negative $18 million to a positive $13.7 million, and it's close to the 1/12 of our operating expenditures as a target per our rate ordinance. Our expenditures in FY17 were $3.7 million under budget. So we did operate under budget, and it's about approximately $4 million above what we spent in FY16. This is just a quick graphic of our expenditures in FY17. The red lines are basically just 1/12 of our budget amount, and you can kind of see in the months of August, September, and in June, in our summer months, we tend to spend more in our operating. That's because those are our busy months where we tend to pump more water and supply more water to our customers. The next graphic is our year-to-date expenditures by category for CIP. So FY17, we began spending more for the non-reclamation rehab. That was work done at the with our interceptors and those type of things. We continue to spend a lot of money at the rehab plant. And again, we're going to spend money next fiscal year on covering the our clarifiers to control odor controls. And then we heard a lot about talk about Maximo. That would be the yellow box on FY17. That's our work order system, and that's basically a lot of work we put in upgrading that system so we can better control our assets through asset management in the future. Quick graphic on our water use production. It kind of was trending as much as it has for the last 3 years. Again, you can kind of see in July and August, September, October, November, it was a little bit higher than FY16 and also the last 3 months of the fiscal year in April, May, and June. A quick graphic on our debt coverage. Our senior subordinate lien, our covenants is 1.20 times. And for senior, it's 1.33 times. We achieved a level of 2.81 for senior in FY17 and 1.83 for senior and subordinate. So we were well above our covenants levels. The next graphic, days cash on hand. We had about 397 days of cash on hand at the end of FY17. You can look at FY11. We were just a little over 100 days. So again, we've turned this around quite a bit financially in the last 4 or 5 years, and we're sitting in a very good financial position. The next graphic is water consumption. We kind of talked about that on the other slide with production. It kind of goes along with each other, and you can kind of see our production trends with what our customers actually consume. And then the last graphic is just you can kind of see our production as relationship to precipitation. As we get in the months where it's actually really drier, you can see our production actually increases, and as we get more rain, our production decreases. And that will be our topic for today, so I stand for any questions.
Commissioner Stebbins, then Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thanks for that report. One question. So very impressive cash on hand number. Is there a target for that? I mean, at what point do you put it in, keep it in reserve as opposed to spending on capital projects?
Madam Chairman and Commissioner Stebbins, so in the rate ordinance, it dictates that as we start getting a cash and the working capital balance starts increasing, that we take that excess above 1/12 and start moving it to CIP. So we are looking at moving some of our working capital balance this year to CIP to start work on covering the clarifiers on the odor control issue. That's a $15 million project, and I believe I will come back to this board and ask to move and out of FY18's budget some revenue from operating to capital to pay for that clarifier work to start that, and as we use some of that cash.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Art Stebbins, just to add to that, that cash on hand is essentially capital dollars for projects that have been encumbered. So they pay out over multiple years.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Stan, can I ask a quick question about that working capital? I noticed that in beginning of FY17, it was 6.4, it's 13.7 now, and I'm just wondering how that doubled, basically, which is what it is, from 6.4 to 13.7. And is it, was it an accounting write-off of liabilities of sort? That's a fairly significant change to working capital, and I know there's a lot of factors that can affect that are actually not either revenue or expenditure type things, but more accounting related.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Perry, as I said before, we were about $3.7 million under budget for expenditures, and then we were about $4.5 million up on revenue from FY16. That's basically $7 million right there, and that gets you about 13.7. That's the bulk of it.
It's real money.
It's real money.
Yeah. And then I want to also applaud your debt coverage ratios, because I remember when I came on the board in 2011, I think most of your senior, junior, non-subordinated debt coverage was fairly low. When I looked at it, I had some concerns, and to be up at 2.81, that's just phenomenal debt coverage.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So with that, if there's no more discussion, we need a motion.
Move approval of C-1727.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Oh, sorry, I thought it was on. So next item, we have item B, C-1728, approving the State of New Mexico approval of the Albuquerque Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority FY18 budget. Stan.
Madam Chairman and members of the board, what you have before you is a letter certifying our 2018 budget from the State of New Mexico's Local Governments Division of DFAS. We're required to bring this communication to this governing body and make it as part of the minutes to this governing body. I stand for any questions.
Any questions? No. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor of C-1728 say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item we have is C-1729, approving service connection agreement for water and sewer service with Artson Properties LLC at 10301 Cottonwood Park Northwest. Mr. Chris Cadena.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the board. Here to simply present a service connection agreement for a property and kind of located near Cottonwood Mall in the Northwest service area. It's a retail development currently in an undeveloped site with the existing infrastructure adjacent to the property, and they're merely just wanting service for water and sewer. They'll be responsible for paying utility expansion charges, water supply charges. Simply, we're presenting this because they're outside the adopted service area.
Sorry. Next item, C 1730, approving recommendation of award RFP for CC&B, Mr. H. Warren.
Yeah, Madam Chair and members of the board, we're seeking your approval of our RFP that we sent out for customer service billing system. We've been on version 2.2 since 2009. It was implemented. We're now going to move up to 2.6. There's been several enhancements in there. We currently have about 100 customizations. We should be able to go back to base and get that down to about 15 customizations. It'll also allow some additional functionality to do some of the work where, kind of like the Good Neighbor Fund we've been looking at with our Roundup program. It'll give us that additional functionality to kind of help out the community.
Any questions? Is there no questions? There's a motion and a second, 2 seconds approving C 1730. All those in favor say yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item, C 1731, approving recommendation of award P20180000002, solar energy feasibility advisor John Stomp.
Madam Chair and members of the board, we went out to an RFP to select a next phase of our solar energy projects. This is for a feasibility advisor. We had 2 people respond to the RFP, and tonight's selection is Triple H Solar, which was the same company that did the work for us that we just got the award for. So we're going to be looking at additional solar at the water plant and other facilities. So we're requesting your approval.
There's a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor say yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, F, C 1732, approving supplemental agreement with EMA Inc. in relation to the asset management Maximo system upgrade, Phase 2. Cody Stinson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we're seeking approval of an amendment to the EMA contract to extend and further our asset management program within the Water Authority. This amendment includes a procurement to do full cost accounting for all of our assets, so we can do predictive maintenance and condition monitoring for all of our assets. It can be used in conjunction with our CIP plan to better use and plan our CIP funds going forward, using real data to fix real things as opposed to, in some cases, guessing in terms of the history of, the history of some of those assets that need to be replaced. So we ask for approval for the amendment.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions?
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second for approval of C 1732. All those in favor say yes. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Last item we have is, thank you, sir. Last item we have is GC 1733, approving memorandum of understanding with the City of Albuquerque, purchased mixed species trees, Carlos Bustos and Haran Veers, the city forester. Did I say that right?
Close.
I'm on a roll tonight.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. We got a short presentation just to explain the importance of this agreement. In front of you got the agreement. It provides for a collaboration between the Water Authority and the City of Albuquerque, particularly the Parks Department. And the agreement is recognizing the importance of urban forests towards improving the quality of life for residents. And this is in accordance with our policy A6, as you can read in the first slide, of the Water 2120 plan. Basically, the agreement, the Water Authority will be purchasing 150 mixed species trees, and we will be donating those trees to the City Parks Department so we can plant them in some of our open space areas. I would say that some of the open space areas of the city. The MOU will be effective until June 10, but it allows for a yearly amendment so we can extend it up to 10 years. And if we do that, it's going to allow for planting up to 1,500 trees over the course of the next 10 years. Joran, as the city forester, is going to be explaining some of the needs that the city has in regards to like increasing the tree canopy. And one of the most important things too with this policy is that as we develop this partnership with the city, we're also going to be extending those agreements with the county as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Joran Veers. I'm the city forester with the Parks Department. I don't want to belabor the point, but you all are aware of the fact that our tree canopy has been declining for some number of years, and we are in the process of planning how we're going to address that. And one of those ways is I've put together a rotational planting plan. We have 7 management areas that we divide the city into, and every year we're going to focus on one of those areas and plant 150 trees. 3 years later, that same area will then be under a pruning cycle, allowing us to keep up with the structural pruning of these young trees to give them the longest life possible. Trees do a lot of good things for us. Again, everything from sequestering carbon and reducing stormwater runoff to increasing property values. This is one of the parks that we'll be highlighting. This winter, we are going to be planting in our Area 7, which is largely the southwest quadrant of the city. It does include a little bit of the downtown area, Santa Barbara, Martineztown, Tigüe, but mostly will be in the southwest quadrant. And just a view to show you there's plenty of room for trees in a lot of our parks. In this particular park, I spoke with several young gentlemen, middle school age, that were there at the time, and I asked them if they wanted more trees, and they said, no, we want to play football. But the tree that's there in the center is damaged. We would actually move that tree, replace it in a different area, and give them more room for football while at the same time giving ourselves more trees. This picture is just to show off some nifty technology that we've just invested in. It's a system called Tree Plotter, and it allows us to go in and do inventory work. And I've used it initially in parks that we haven't actually done the inventory yet to very precisely place where we would plant the trees, as well as what species we would plant. So this is a really neat system for us to use, and I just like the whiz-bangness of it, so I brought it up to show you. Tigüe Park. This is one of the parks that we will be planting in. It's not one of the parks that necessarily is lacking in trees, but part of this idea is that even the parks that are in good shape now, those trees age, they die, they need replacing, and we want to stay on top of that replacement cycle. I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Councilor Davis.
Briefly, Jordan, thank you so much. Thank you all for doing this work, Mr. Sanchez. This is a great partnership for everybody to achieve some common goals. But going back to Tree Plotter really quickly, I just want to say I think also the Parks Department has been working, if I recall, with the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps to help not just do some of the tree inventory work, but to pass down that value of conservation and the importance of this sort of work in summer programs with the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps to help us not just know where they are, but if I understand, it's helping us decide how big they are, how much water they're using, what their health is, so that this kind of project can follow behind and decide which trees come out or how to do that planning in a smarter way. So essentially we don't have to wait on them to die, right?
Yes, Board Member Davis and Chairman, Madam Chairman, this system will allow us a lot of management potential. We can look at where we need to plant, where we need to remove, where we need to do pest or insect treatment. We have been working with Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, and we will continue that project as a way of, again, kind of training new people coming up and getting us the help we need to get this work done. We are going to be also developing a volunteer program to help us, because with this system, once we do a system-wide inventory, we can keep it up on a daily basis live. We don't have to go back every 10 years and recount. We can keep it up as we work.
And Madam Chair, if I can follow, and just remind me, did Carlos, did I hear you right, that essentially what this first year is going to allow us to do one basic management area, and I guess, assuming that works, then if we want, the rest of us want to see more of those in the rest of other parts of the city and the county, we're going to have to reinvest in this every year and approve that every year to continue that work. Is that right?
Board Member Davis, yes, sir. That's the plan, and the idea is to also work with the extended area by working with the county and reach out to all those 34 parks also that the county manages, so we can extend our canopy. So it's a big approach, and we're basically following the lead of the city forester in this case as to like their management strategies, and part of their management strategies is to every year reach out to like each district within the service area in the city.
Thanks for thinking long term. Thank you. Appreciate
One more question. So do you partner with Tree New Mexico as well?
Madam Chair, I have in the past partnered with Tree New Mexico on a number of projects. Where we don't quite meet with them is that they typically work on private property sites, and we're strictly working on city-maintained sites. So they've planted, for instance, in some of the parkway areas that strip between the sidewalk and the curb. Technically, that's a city easement, but because that's not necessarily irrigated to city specifications, our directive has been that we won't assume responsibility for something that we didn't control the irrigation to. Water is fundamental. What you guys provide is the key. And so for the city to take on a particular site, we first want to make sure that it's actually being irrigated to our specifications. But Tree New Mexico, I've known Sue Probart for many years, and we do partner on a few things.
She's done some great work, you know, and I know that, you know, the goal of the city is to have, what is it, 23 or 27% canopy, and I think we're at 7%, and I think my area, the southwest area of the city, is actually even lower than that. So I really appreciate that there's a lot of effort, not just by Tree New Mexico and others, but by, you know, the city of Albuquerque and obviously the Water Authority and their commitment to do this, to do the canopy in the city. So obviously much needed. So thank you. I appreciate your time. So is there a motion for approval? Motion? A motion and a second. All those in favor of C-1733, say yes. Opposed, no. Seeing no other business, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.